Hi, everyone. As Joyce mentioned, I'm Jonathan, founder of RSG, also known as Relief Singapore. Thank you very much for joining this event. This talk is actually part of an ongoing online photography exhibition titled, Are You Home Yet? Plight of the Rohingya Refugees in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. The exhibition was organized in collaboration with UNHCR to commemorate World Refugee Day on June 20th. And we felt it would be fitting to also organize a talk so that the public could find out more about the distress and misery of the Rohingya refugees. So RSG, just a bit about RSG, what we did. We first visited the camps in Cox's Bazar in March 2018. Soon after, we partnered with the Bangladesh government's Directorate General of Health Services. We did clean water projects in primary health centers. We also deployed medical volunteers at the Malaysian Field Hospital, Hope Field Hospital, primary health centers of PhD, Partners in Health and Development. In early 2019, RSG began sports programs in the camps as a mental health intervention. Sadly, not long after we kicked off actually it was badminton programs for female Rohingya adolescents. As you know, COVID-19 arrived and we had to suspend our activities. So as we couldn't travel overseas because of the pandemic, we decided to help remotely by crowdfunding for the purchase of reusable face masks to be distributed to Rohingya, because at the time we were very well protected by our Singapore government, who was giving out free masks to citizens. So we thought it was something that could be distributed to the Rohingya as well. So we working closely with the UN's coordination body, we identified the humanitarian gap, which is 355,000 children, youth, and elderly Rohingya who do not.
I'll join the webinar.
RSG then partnered with UNHCR by donating masks for the UN Refugee Agency to distribute in the 16 camps that it manages. Today, we once again collaborate with UNHCR. Here with us is Anne. Hang on. Yes, Anne Moy, UNHCR's private sector partnership manager here in Singapore, whom I have been working very closely with to organize both the photography exhibition and the talk. And we'll also be facilitating the Q&A session later on. And with us, of course, is our speaker, Charles Campbell, who began his career with UNHCR in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and has worked in operations in camps in 15 countries across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. He's currently the head of the field and technical section of the UNHCR sub-office in Cox's Bazar. Trained in civil engineering, Charles also holds a master's degree in environmental engineering and project management. He has worked in various capacities in UNHCR, including providing technical support, site planning, shelter strategy development and implementation, managing technical teams, infrastructure projects in refugee camps and host communities, and leading and coordinating UN agencies and national international NGOs as part of the UN cluster coordination system in large humanitarian crises. So here we are very honored to have a very experienced humanitarian worker to speak to us. But before Charles gives us his presentation proper, I would like to present a preview of the Are You Home Yet photography exhibition that this talk is part of. We hope this music video will provide you with a visual background of the plight of the Rohingya in Cox's Bazar, which Charles will address in his talk. Video, please. Thank you.
Look around at all this mess. My heart is sinking, I must confess. But the sun will rise again. I know it's not the end. Look around at all this mess. Something in me tells me that the sun will rise again, brighten up this place again. You'll be free from this nightmare you see. Oh, it's not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Oh, it's not not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Just believe. Oh, look around at all this mess. Something in me tells me that the sun will rise again, brighten up this place again. You'll be free from this nightmare you see. Oh, it's not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Yeah, oh, it's not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Whoa, you'll go against the odds to rise from the ashes. Rise from the ashes. Whoa, go against the odds to find your rest in peace. Find your rest in peace. 'Cause all is not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Yeah, yeah, oh, it's not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Just believe. Just believe. Oh, just believe. Yeah.
That's quite touching. I mean, that's a little bit part of my life, but yeah, it's really sad. As Jonathan mentioned, my name is Charles Campbell. I'm in Cox's Bazar. I work for the UNHCR, and I'm head of the field and technical section, responsible for a lot of the construction and all of that you see. I have 5 units that I supervise: shelter and settlement, energy and environment, public health, and field and site management. I'm very honored to be invited here today to talk a little bit about my work and the situation of the Rohingya refugees. And I hope that by the time I finish my presentation, you'll get a little bit of an idea of what it is that the situation of the Rohingya and what it is that UNHCR is trying to do to help the situation. I've been here for a year now. So I arrived in a few months. In July last year, I'll be a year. And over the year, it has been a really interesting, but a highly stressful. But it's been one of the most intense experiences of my life. So in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, there for those of us who came after the emergency, there are 2 periods. There is before 2017 and after 2017. And from the graph, you'll see that before 2017, there were like, I think it was 40,000 Rohingya refugees left that were in 2 registered camps, one in the north and one in the south, Kutupalong registered camp and then Nayapara registered camp. And you could see that in terms of inflow into Bangladesh, it was really not a lot. And then in 2017, within the space of 3 months, from August 2017 to December 2017, 750,000 Rohingyas fled their country because of persecution, because of they were chased out of their country and they had to seek refuge in Bangladesh. For some of you who know the history, you'll know that this is not the first time it happened. It happened in 77, 78, where 200,000 Rohingya came into Bangladesh. It happened again in 89, where another 250,000 came. 92, they were forcibly returned. Most of them were forcibly returned. And over the next 10, 20 years, only 35,000, as you can see, pre-2016, there were like 35,000, 6,000 families. Now they are close to 900,000 Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar, chasing 200,000 families. You will notice that over half of them are children. And when I talk about during the presentation, you will see that this figure has a significance. This is the map of Cox's Bazar. So there's one massive mega camp. Some of you probably heard about the mega camp, where something like 700,000 Rohingyas live in the north, and then another 100 and some thousand down in the camps in the south. This is where they have been for the past. This is the 4th year of the crisis now. In terms of how the response is organized, how the operation is organized, so that there are 2 mutually reinforcing interconnected coordination mechanisms. One led by the government, which is the Refugee Relief and Repatriation Commission, and then the other, which is the government counterpart that coordinates the response, and then the intersector coordination group, which is the humanitarian side of the response. And we work very closely together to make sure that the needs of the Rohingya refugees are met. There are 11 sectors that have been activated. The decision to activate a sector is based on the needs, and on the ground, it's a decision that's taken between the government, the UN, and it responds to the needs that are on the ground. So here you will see that there are 11. This more or less mirrors the global cluster. So here in Bangladesh, we don't have the cluster system, which is normally the United Nations coordination mechanism that we put in place when there's an event that goes over and above the capacity of any one agency. And we don't have the refugee coordination model. So normally in a refugee situation, it will be UNHCR that will be coordinating. But in this situation, it's a hybrid between the refugee coordination model and the cluster system, which is the intersector coordination group. And these are the various sectors. The sectors coordinate specific sectors. So you will see water, sanitation, hygiene, the sector lead, which is the government and UNICEF. They coordinate all the assistance, the strategy for water, sanitation, hygiene, and that goes for all the others, for health, for site management, for food and security, for nutrition, emergency telecommunications, because we need access to the internet and all of that. So that's kind of how the configuration is. In terms of UNHCR response, so what the fundamental reason why UNHCR is here is to provide protection. And protection has 2 parts. Protection has the legal side of it, and the main part, and then it has the assistance part of it. The assistance part of it is what I'm responsible for, which is providing the shelter and the water, the sanitation, the hygiene assistance, the hospitals, the roads, the infrastructure, which is what I'm responsible for. And then the protection side of it is ensuring that the rights of the Rohingya are respected, are safeguarded and respected. One of the fundamental ways that UNHCR does that is through registration. You have to have some sort of identity. And now we do biometric registration, and then based on the registration, you will provide documentation. That documentation guarantees you some sort of freedom of movement and access to some of the rights of the Rohingya. We provide education also. A lot of our assistance, a lot of our protection support that we provide is community-based. Bangladesh is one of the operations that I've worked in, and I've worked in for UNHCR for 20 years. Bangladesh is one of the operations that has the most robust community-based support mechanism where a large part of the assistance that we provide and the support that we provide is based on and provided through the refugees themselves. And that's something that we're quite proud of here in Bangladesh, because it's something that UNHCR, it's part of our guidelines, but this is the operation that we have been able to actually do that. Child protection, as I said, 52% of the population of the almost 900,000 are children. That means less than 18 years old. So there's a strong child protection, community-based child protection, of course, based on the community. Education is another protection tool. Unfortunately, since March 2020, because of the pandemic, government suspended school. So kids for the past 15 months, kids have not been going to school. Initially it was suspended because of pandemic, and then we had the issue of which curriculum, whether it should be the Bangladeshi curriculum or the Myanmar curriculum. And then finally the government agreed to do a pilot with the Myanmar curriculum, because the idea is that when Rohingya go back to Myanmar, they should have a level of education and in a system where they can be able to go back and easily be integrated into their own societies. And gender-based violence, we have a lot of violence. When you are in limbo for 4 years, you're not allowed to work, you're not allowed to go to school for kids, you're not allowed any kind of freedom of movement. It affects your psyche. So one of the ways that we see, and one of the ways that we're trying to protect, especially women and children, is through assistance program in gender-based violence, because we see a lot of it. And the men turn on their kids and their wives. And one of the main ways that we do this is protection by presence. So UNHCR has staff directly through ourselves and through our partners that are in the camps every single day, talking to the communities, asking them first of all, you have to build trust, of course, but then after that, when they trust you, they tell you what the issues are, and then they allow you to help. So that's kind of like one of the fundamental ways in which we help. And then of course, we build resilience in these families, and by providing access to livelihood opportunities so that they can be able to earn money and be able to support themselves. But unfortunately, in Bangladesh, so far, the right to work has not been granted to refugees. So what we have are volunteers, what we call volunteers. So volunteers are refugees that are allowed to provide services, humanitarian services most of the time, and are provided an incentive. They're not given a salary, because if you get a salary, it means you're a worker. We provide incentives to them so that they will be able to manage a little bit their lives. But the scale, as we have something like 50,000 refugees that we're providing incentive to, whilst we have 200,000 families that are living in the camp. So it's really restricted, and that's one of the major challenges that we're facing. In terms of assistance, a lot of you saw in the video the type of shelters that were being provided when the refugees arrived. They used to call it makeshift, but now we can't call it makeshift anymore. But these are rudimentary shelters built with bamboo and plastic sheet. So one of my units, the shelter and settlement unit, is responsible for, first of all, site planning. That means ensuring that the shelters are arranged in a structured manner, and then construction of shelter. Over the past couple of years, we have come up with some innovative approaches. Now we have like a double-story shelter that we are proposing to the government. Because of the high density in the camps, you have something like close to 40,000 persons per square kilometers in Bangladesh. It's higher than Dhaka, and everybody knows that Dhaka is quite it's 4 times higher than Dhaka, which is like 10,000 persons per square kilometers. It's higher than New York, which is even more than that. It's higher than even Philippines. I mean, if you want to take a country in Asia, in order to just imagine the population density that these camps, because there was no space, people just built wherever they could. And site management, that's when the shelters and the communities and all of that are built, you have site management. It's another sector that we support, in which we provide with the government. So we have the camp in charges that work for the Refugee Relief and Repatriation Commissioner, our government counterpart, that are responsible for identifying the issues in terms of assistance. Wherever there's a gap in assistance, we raise it. We find out who the service provider is, and we make sure that it's provided. And then non-food items, these are your kitchen sets, your mats, your blankets, and all of that. We distribute non-food items to refugees. Unfortunately, we can only do it one-off, even though these non-food items, after 2 years, most of them have worn out. But because of lack of resources, when we distributed for those that arrived in 2017, 2018, 2019, after that, we have not had the possibility to renew them at this point. And then, of course, one of my other units is water, sanitation, hygiene. Of course, water is life. We have various ways that we provide water for them, through boreholes, through hand pumps, through pumped networks. And then sanitation, your bathing facilities, your sanitation, your latrines and toilets, all of that. We have managed to install one of the largest fecal sludge treatment. You know, in Singapore, when you go to the toilet, you flush it, it disappears and it goes into a system that you don't see anymore. Unfortunately, in most of the camps, that's not how it is. We just build latrines for them. But since 2019, we have started where we built the first fecal sludge treatment. It's a state-of-the-art fecal sludge treatment unit, where the waste from the latrine goes into a system that is treated, dried, and then the effluents are tested to make sure that they don't pollute the environment. So that's one thing that we managed to do. It's still far away. We are building the second one. We need way more than that, but it's step by step. And one of my other units is energy and environment, what we provide. So the single most important assistance that we have been able to provide the refugees, which is why, if you read about it, the deforestation has stopped, is liquid petroleum gas as a cooking fuel. And it was when we did an assessment of the various types of fuels that we have, it was the cleanest fuel that we had. It's not renewable, unfortunately, but it's the cleanest. And one of the activities that provide that we distribute LPG gas at different frequencies depending on the family size to every single refugee in the camp, because that's the only way you can stop them from systematically decimating the forests. And that's the only way you can be able to get the goodwill of the government and the host communities to allow them to stay, if you make sure that they don't destroy the environment. Public health, that has to do everything with the health of the population, all the infrastructure in terms of health post-health facilities, nutrition facilities, mental health. I mentioned that when you put people in limbo like this, there's a lot of mental health issues that we're coming across. So we have the mental health and psychosocial support program. It's one of the largest in any other office in UNHCR. And we provide community-based support. So it's the refugees themselves that we train, that are able to reach out to their compatriots to be able to identify what the issues are and find solutions. And then, of course, we have psychologists and doctors that also provide much more technical support. And then support to host communities, because in order to ensure that we have peaceful coexistence, you cannot just support the refugees and leave the host communities, because sometimes the host communities are very poor. The adjacent host communities are also quite poor. So one of the things we have done, we've renovated close to 100 schools. We've done 10 kilometers of roads. We spent, I think, like 13 or 14 million on health facilities. And we provided cash support to a lot of them, and to the poor households. And then skills training, we did all of that to make sure that the standard of living between the refugees and the host communities are not stark, because after that you get problems with the host community, and then issues of the whole asylum is put in question if the communities adjacent don't want to accept them. One of the main challenges that we've been seeing for the past 15 months, actually, since March 2020, is the lockdown. And we have had restrictions, and today the last circular, well, the last in a long line of circular just came that from tomorrow we have severe lockdown. So I will not be able to be in this office tomorrow. All of us will be working from home from now until the 7th. So the initial period for the extreme lockdown is for 7 days. But this, I mean, definitely that affects our assistance. As I said, most of the support we provide are community-based support, where our staff are in the camps providing and training and supporting the refugees. Now that we're not going to be there, that's going to be a big gap. And when there's a gap, when we are not there to provide protection and assistance, then you have all these gangs and all these drug lords and gangs they start the activities again. They start kidnapping. They start holding people for ransom and killing. And so it's a major issue. We're still negotiating with the government to allow some minimum level of activities, but it's really hard. And then of course the learning centers, as I said, children out of school for 15 months. Even informal schooling that we were allowed to do because of the COVID, all of them have been shut down. So that's kind of, and when all of it is shut down, what happens is the 8-year-old and 10-year-old kids, because the father doesn't have a job, they send them off to get married, or they send them out to go and work. So that's where child labor comes into it, early and forced marriage comes into it, and these are all gaps in protection that when we are not there, the situation deteriorates significantly. In terms of COVID response, we have done quite a lot. We have 1,400 community health workers. These are refugees that are provided incentives. We have one of the largest severe acute respiratory infection and isolation treatment center that was done in 8 weeks. That was a feat. It has never been done anywhere in any of the camps during the COVID, and they managed to do it here. I was not here yet, but the team that I'm working with have, they managed to do that, and that was quite a feat that they managed to do, so that UNHCR will be able to support the government to treat COVID-19 cases. In terms of monsoon preparedness, one of the things you will see the photo there, one of the peculiarities of working here, at least for me, is that you cannot escape. You have the cyclone season, you have the monsoon, you have 2 monsoon seasons. One of them we are writing it now, and another one will be towards the end of the year, around October to November. And in order for us to be able to respond to it, it's also community-based effort. So we train a lot of these refugees. And we give them intense training. We give them equipment. You see that kid in the photo. There's a lot of drowning, but since 2018, my colleagues have told me that the number of drownings has reduced significantly, because we have these safety unit volunteers that are provided and are deployed at specific locations where you have these ponds. You know, anywhere you have like a depression in land, it gathers water during the rainy season, and then kids go, they play in it, they start playing in it, and then after that it becomes an emergency because they drown. As preparation, so there are a number of preparedness activities we undertake before the monsoon season, where we do a lot of training for our staff, for our partners, and for the volunteers. We distribute tie-down kits. So one of the preparedness measures is to make sure that even though they are bamboo and plastic sheets, even though the houses are very rudimentary and they don't withstand the wind, we still provide the support for them to be able to attach their houses as best as possible, so that when the monsoon season comes, at least it mitigates a little bit of the damage. And then we have put in place an incident reporting system. So every day I get a report from the camp, from all these volunteers, thousands of volunteers, where whenever there's high winds or rains or floods or landslides, I get a report immediately about the number of casualties, number of people affected, men, women, and children, what type of damage, and then that's how we respond and send our partners to repair all the to repair the houses, to take them into communal infrastructure if the houses are damaged, and then start doing and whatever support they need, psychosocial and all of that. There are a number of challenges that still remain, for sure. Bangladesh is one of the most challenging operations that I've ever worked in. One of the first things when you talk to a Rohingya refugee, one of the first requests they make is that they want to go back. They ask you, what is and when do you think the situation in Myanmar will be safe enough for us to go back? That's one of the first questions. I've been in the every time I go to the camp, I make time to talk to them, and one of the first things they ask you is, when am I going to go back? When you tell them that it's dependent on the political will of the country of Myanmar and the international community, the second question they ask is, can I have work? Can I have something to do? I cannot be going back to my wife and my family without a job. Like, how can a man be proud of themselves if they don't have something to do? Access to education and livelihoods, these are the main things. Construction also, so far I've been battling because my unit is directly dealing with it to get authorization to build the double-story shelters, to get authorization to build even infrastructure like distribution points, even health centers. The government has said that the Rohingya crisis is a temporary crisis. They will not stay for long, so they don't allow us to build anything in any permanent material. So that has been an ongoing battle over the past, since I've been here, and since even before I've been here. But sometimes we make some gains, and yeah. And then of course the security and protection environment, because of COVID, because of the fact that we are not there, as I said, all these gangs and all of that are taking the space that we have normally been taking, and this is being a problem, because even when the COVID is finished, you're going to find out that for us to gain the confidence of the community, for us to be able to support them again, and because they'll think that we abandon them when they go and get stuff, we leave. So it takes a lot of community mobilization to get that. Our budget is about 300 million, 294 million. We're only 36% funded. So and the resources are going further down. 4 years after the emergency, and you can imagine that a lot of these activities that I tell you, we do some of them, but we cannot. So that this is why I'm really happy to be talking to you today, to give you a little bit of a picture of what it is that we are doing here, and the situation of the Rohingyas. And I'm really happy that we have people that are far away. I mean, far away, that are so interested that they give up their time and their energy and to be able to listen to us about a crisis that might not be directly related to them, but they feel enough to want to know and want to help. So I thank you very much, and I think I hand you over back to Jonathan at this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. Yeah, I can imagine the kind of situation you're in, and you said that tomorrow you'll be. So now you're quite near the camps, right? You're in the UNHCR region, and tomorrow onwards you'll be back in town. Okay. And well, it was a very good overall overview and good coverage of the situation. And bearing in mind that we just commemorated World Refugee Day on June 20th, and the focus was on health, education and sports, which you did touch on, and there are just so many areas of needs in the Rohingya camps and also around the world in other refugee communities. Thanks, Charles, for the presentation. We'll come back to you again very soon because we have the Q&A, and I'll pass the time to Anne, who will facilitate the Q&A session.
Thanks so much, John. Thanks so much, Charles. Okay, everyone, my name is Anne. I'm the Partnerships Manager with UNHCR, and I shall be facilitating the Q&A session. So we have quite a number of questions here, 14 as of now, and I think we'll try our best to cover as many questions as possible. If you like, please feel free to send through your questions through the pigeonhole. Okay, so first question. Okay. First question, Charles, I'll let you take a short break. This one is for John.
Oh.
Yeah. How can we partner with Relief SG with what you are doing? Are there any key impactful experiences which you can share with us?
Wow. Okay. I prefer the first question to go straight to Charles, but okay, I'll take this. Well, we unfortunately, because of the COVID, we have stopped our psychosocial support program, which is the badminton through sports, providing a mental health intervention for adolescents in our camps. We have stopped that. We really hope to continue with that when, I don't know when it will happen. Because we were even in the midst of preparing, we even had the blueprints. 2 architectural volunteers even came out with a blueprint for a community sports hall, in partnership with one of the local partners, and to do a sports hall for the female Rohingya. So get in touch with us. Later on at the end of the session, we will be flashing the emails, and you can get in touch with RSG and to find out what our projects ahead. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, John. Next question is for you, Charles. What kind of help is given to those going through physical abuse?
Okay, so that's the domain of protection. So the first thing that happens is you need to take the person out of that situation. And a lot of the physical abuse is in homes. You know, a husband and a wife. The husband doesn't work, and he takes it out on the wife and the kids. So the first thing is to take the family out of the home, separate the family so that the perpetrator and the victim are separated. The second thing we have, as I said, a lot of the assistance is community based. We have these models. They are called they are refugees within the community that provide protection support, that counseling and these kind of services. First, to the perpetrator to try to understand a little bit what the issues are, and then why they feel that reaction is the only reaction open to them. So we counsel the perpetrator to show them, to demonstrate to them in a safe environment that this is not the way to handle your frustration. You cannot take your frustration out on your kid or your wife. So that and that's one part of it. And then of course the women are taken, first of all, they're taken out of the situation. They are provided medical support if there's any medical support needed, and then they're provided counseling. And then if the counseling takes, they go back to the home. If not, then we have to put them in a facility until we can find a longer term solution for them in terms of reuniting with their spouse or husband, or being separated and then living apart from their spouse or husband. So kind of that's a little bit the process that goes through. It's a very long process, but yeah, it's part of the work, the daily protection-based, community-based protection that we provide. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Another question for you. Have the refugees been vaccinated?
That's a very good question, because this is something that we are struggling with, and we have been struggling with it for quite a while. No, the short answer is no, the refugees have not been vaccinated. We have got the assurances from the government that as soon as vaccines start arriving, they will be vaccinated. But unfortunately, Bangladesh has received something like 10 million AstraZeneca vaccines. But because Bangladesh is 165 million, of course, they prioritize their populations. Now they're going to get another million AstraZeneca vaccines, and then another million or so Pfizer. Pfizer, unfortunately, they cannot send to Cox's Bazar because of the cold chain that you need to respect. But we are really getting assurances from the government that in the next set of AstraZeneca, which will arrive in about 4 to 6 weeks, the priority, so it's not going to be all the 1 million refugees that are going to be targeted, because the government now is doing I think it's 3%, the vulnerable caseload, the old and the aged and all of that. So 130,000 have been registered and agreed with the government. It's been shared with the civil surgeon, and they have that. So we want them, we are negotiating with the government to set aside 260,000 AstraZeneca doses, so that when they finally arrive, the Rohingya refugees will also be part of the vaccination drive. That's what we're working on now.
Great, thank you so much, Charles. And you mentioned earlier in your presentation as well that there are quite a number of these gangs in the camps. So I have a question here from a participant of this talk. Are these gangs formed by the refugees themselves? And do the Bangladeshis interact with the refugees? I think those are two separate questions.
Okay, yes. Some of them, a lot of the camps in the south, especially, it will be difficult to find the boundary between the host and the refugees, because they integrate, they live together and they integrate. But from the protection reports we have got, a lot of them are Rohingya refugees, and then you have a number of them also that are from the host community, and mainly it's fueled by drugs and smuggling, guns, and all of that. And every day I get these updates from the police where they catch 1 million pills, yaba pills, they call them yaba here, 1 million yaba pills. So they're actively pursuing them. But yes, it's a combination of both Rohingya and the local community that is surrounding. The second question was the second part of the question.
Do locals interact with the refugees?
Oh yes, I mean when I mentioned that in terms of support to host community, the aim is to for peaceful coexistence. So the shops in the host community, refugees go there and buy, and then the shops in the camp, refugee and the host go. So there's a very cordial relationship, and we're really trying to build on that, so that the refugees and the host they live side by side, because you have to. Otherwise, it undermines the whole institution of asylum. If you cannot get the host to accept the refugees, I mean, 1 million refugees, it's like 3 times it's like like half the population of the host, but it's more than the villages surrounding the camp. So it's a lot of people in your neighborhood. So yeah, we have to work on that.
And if you don't mind, I ask a follow-up question to Charles as well, because I was wondering. I know when night falls in the camps, it's a really different kind of life over there. So in relation to just now the participant who asked a question about the gangs, I'm just wondering, have there been lights in the camps, or is still a missing infrastructure?
Okay, I mean, there has been a lot of work in terms of so the lighting of the camp is a protection response. It's a collaboration between the Energy and Environment Unit and protection. So what we have done, because we don't have resources to cover the whole camp, of course, we have something like, I don't know, between 14 and 16,000 solar street lights that are in there, but it's a small proportion of what is required. You know the size of the camp because you've been there. So yes, there are solar street lights that have been. It's through UNHCR, through ADB, through World Bank. We have the mini grids, the grids that provide several lights, and then you have the individual solar street lights. But it's far from adequate, and because of that, there are many protection issues. Like sometimes women don't feel safe to go to the bathrooms, to the toilets. They tell you that. So you still have open defecation, that happens because of lack of protection at night. Yeah, so that's also a major issue.
Okay, thank you so much, Charles. And you mentioned earlier, that women sometimes don't feel safe, when they are going to the toilet, to the bathroom. So this question is also about women. Do they work in the camps? What kind of jobs do they do?
I mean, as I told you, Rohingya refugees do not have the right to work. They don't have the right. The government does not allow them to work. But one of the ways that we get around that is we call them volunteers, as I said. So in order for us to provide some sort of cash support to the refugees, we say that they are volunteers. So they work in various fields. Like I have in my units, I have women that are part of construction gangs that are repairing the roads, and they get cash support, cash for work. They're in protection. They are part of the community health workers. So there are some activities that they perform, but they get paid an incentive. It's not a real salary. So what we're trying to do is to lobby the government to allow the refugees to work, because if they work, they can take care of their health, they can take care of their LPG distribution, they can take care of their kids, and all of that. But without help, they are solely reliant on humanitarian aid, and that's not sustainable. Because our budget is 36% funded. There's a big gap. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Charles. And just one more question, a few more questions for you. How is information being disseminated in the camps? Are there active measures UNHCR or other agencies are taking to prevent Rohingyas from being victims of human trafficking?
Okay, so in terms of, if you noticed when I shared the sectors that were activated, communication with communities was one of them. Because in Bangladesh, as I said, that the decision to activate a sector or not is based on the needs. So communication with communities is exactly that. It's the mechanism within which we communicate with communities to pass messages to them about our assistance and what we do and our gaps and our challenges, and of course feedback from the communities. So in the communication with communities sector, they have also thousands of volunteers that they use to pass messages around. And then there are many modes. We have TVs, we have loudspeakers, we have all of these activities, we have meetings, we have community meetings, we have information kiosks. Oh yeah, there are many ways that we pass information to refugees. And then there are also ways, complaints and feedback response mechanism. These are mechanisms where you can call, like protection has a protection hotline where if there's an issue, you can call. And we have a box where people can put their complaints, and then we have people like actual physical staff that are sitting at a desk that can take complaints. So there are many means by which hopefully they have access. But to be honest with you, there was a study that was done about, I don't know, like in April, that said that the Rohingya feel that the humanitarians need to make more effort in terms of reaching out and establishing stronger communication networks. So even though we're doing a lot, there's still a lot to do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Charles. I'm mindful of the time here, so maybe we'll be able to cover 3 more questions. So 3 of the most voted questions. Question for you again, Charles. Does UNHCR have any influence in the site at Bazar? And are there any insights you can share about the government's plans to relocate more Rohingya refugees to Bazar?
Yes, I knew that Basencha would come up. Okay, so some of you are probably aware that the technical and protection assessment that we had been negotiating for like 2 years, even before I came, we actually did it a few months ago. So the UN as a whole, UNHCR is leading the exercise, but the UN, all of I mean, I was the focal point for the technical assessment, and then our protection coordinator for the protection assessment. So we did the assessment. We came up with a certain number of recommendations about what we see. So where we are now is the feedback from the government. So there was a meeting with the government where they said that they really want us to be there because now we have 18,000 refugees on the island. The resources, of course, are provided exclusively by the government now. That's not so they want us, but then UNHCR has said that we need two things. One, we need to negotiate a protection framework. That means the conditions under which we, as the United Nations, will be able to provide assistance. So it's about freedom of movement, so that people can get out off the island. It's about all these basic protection rights. And then the second thing, we need to agree on an operational framework. So these are the two documents that we are negotiating now. To see how under which conditions the UN will be able to engage there. I mean, there are some donors. The donors are split. Some of them are standing in the middle and say that okay, if the UN decides to go, they will support them. But some of them are a little bit more skeptical, and that the island is not safe. I mean, I was part of the assessment. I didn't go on the island, but I was the team leader of it. And the main problem is the embankment, because it's an island. So if you allow water to get in, it will be flooded. But yeah, the government is already working on that. But then there are some other issues that they still need to negotiate. But in terms of the UN engagement, as I say, that the UN now has we're willing to engage, but under certain conditions of respect for human rights and a solid protection framework. Yeah.
Great.
Did I answer both questions? Okay, yeah.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions. Okay. In the early days of the mass exodus, I've heard about the environmental degradation and encroachment of space by wildlife. How is the situation now?
Yes, so we have one of our innovative projects, because I don't think it's happened anywhere else. It's our elephant watchtowers. These are 99 watchtowers, several several tens of meters high, because the camp is in the pathway of elephants. It's the elephant pathway between Myanmar and Bangladesh. So when you put a camp in the middle, of course, it breaks the pathway, and the elephants want to find a way to get through. So in the first couple of years, there were 13 deaths due to elephant encroachment. So now we developed this project with one of our environment partners, where we have these watchtowers. And then when they spot the elephants, there's a procedure that they do to guide the elephants away from the camp. And one thing that I should also mention is that some of you are aware that the camp has been fenced. Even though the UN fought against it, the camp has been fenced. But even with the fencing of the camps, the elephants still break through and pass through. But for us, that's kind of like a major protection issue. But we're finding ways around still having people have freedom of movement, even within a camp that is pretty much all fenced. Yeah.
Thanks, Charles. And if you don't mind me just adding a little bit more to what you just said.
Sure.
So I used to work with IUCN, and IUCN was one of our UNHCR's environmental and conservation partners in Bangladesh, in Cox's Bazar. So apart from the elephant watchtowers, we also, another important component of the project was the training of the refugees as well. So, Charles mentioned earlier that refugees don't have the right to work in Bangladesh, and all these volunteer type opportunities are very important to them, as it gives them some allowance as well. So we actually, together with UNHCR, IUCN trained these refugees. We trained them to be part of a task force, TUSK task force. And this task force, they're actually there to tell people, or to help people, tell the refugees as well as the host communities what to do when they actually see an elephant. They remind them not to panic. They're all equipped with whistles and loud, what do you call them?
Okay,
loudspeakers,
okay.
yeah, with whistles and loudspeakers. And whenever there's an elephant in the camp, these refugee volunteers task force would come together and alert host communities and other refugees to this potential danger. And they're there to help people remain calm. And they also do things like they form a semicircle around the elephant and use their whistles to try to guide the elephant away from the camp. So this refugee volunteer task group is also something that we did back then.
They are still there. They call the elephant response teams now. Now they're like really organized with like jackets and oh yeah. Now they're like a force. They're like a task. Yeah, it's the elephant response teams, and yeah, they are trained. In fact, now we are moving. So we train the refugees. Now we are moving to the host community to train them also and get a team set up. Yeah, you're quite right.
Yeah, and when I was there visiting the camp as well, it was nice to see like the refugees. They actually felt empowered. You know that they were part of something bigger as well. That they're, you know, part of a bigger force that's able to help others as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. Moving on to perhaps the final question. This is a question for both Jonathan and Charles. Can you share with us what made you start your work with refugees?
Okay, I'll go first. For me, it's pretty easy.
Go ahead.
I started working in Freetown in Sierra Leone, where we had a refugee influx from Liberia, from one of our neighboring countries. And I'm a trained civil engineer, and normally when you go to do when you're a civil engineer, you want to work on civil engineering structures, you know, like dams and buildings and multi-story. But for me, I came across this advertisement in the newspaper. Talking about UNHCR. At the time, I didn't know who they were or anything, and I gave it a shot. And I found out that within the first, I don't know, it was like a few months, because I was based in the capital city in Freetown, and of course the camps are out in the countryside. The first time I went to the camps and I saw the condition that refugees were living in, and I realized that I could do so much good. You know, I mean, you build a dam, of course, it provides water for a whole city, but I felt that I could do so much good with the skills that I had for refugees that had nothing, like less than nothing. So, I mean, from then I have been motivated to work, and I haven't looked back. And even though I'm away from my family, away from my daughter and my wife and all of that, I still feel that what I'm doing makes a difference to people's lives. And this is why I keep doing it 20 years later.
Okay.
Thanks,
well, I was trained as an accountant, so I studied accountancy back in university. But even back then, I was really interested in world affairs, which was why later on I went on to do postgraduate studies in international relations. So refugee was one of the issues that I was already looking at, but it wasn't in depth, and it wasn't so focused. And I guess it's the power of, you know, media. It was simply watching videos and reading more news on the plight of refugees, and I saw these particular videos of refugees in Asia. Okay, I wouldn't mention names, but they were basically refugees in Iran, persecuted by the military, vulnerable persons being, you know, having sexual violence committed against them. So that really got to me, and it really tugged at me, and it got me angry actually. So I was outraged. I was thinking, how can these kind of things happen? So that was the genesis of it, and I decided to devote more time on the refugee cause, and yeah. So just a short answer to that.
Great. Thank you so much, John and Charles, for sharing. I think with that, we shall now conclude the Q&A session. I'm so sorry that we were not able to cover all the questions, but we are running out of time. But feel free to get in touch with us after the session if you would like to know more about the work that we do. So thank you so much. John, back to you.
Okay, back to me. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Charles. And okay, actually, since we don't have much time, I'll just quickly pass it back to you, and because you want to say a few words about UNHCR.
Oh yeah, just a few words, a couple of minutes. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending this talk. It is so heartening to see that, you know, there are people here in Singapore that are interested in learning more about refugee issues. So we have decided to organize this talk with Relief Singapore so as to shed some light on the Rohingya refugee crisis. We wanted you to also hear from someone who is on the ground working closely with the refugees day in and day out. And we wanted to highlight what some organizations are doing there to offer support. So I really hope that this session gave you some insights into the humanitarian activities that are happening out there. So just a little bit more about UNHCR. UNHCR is the world's largest organization dedicated to protecting people forced to flee due to war, conflict, or persecution. Our work cuts across many different focus areas and themes. So apart from providing urgent life-saving assistance such as shelter, food, and water, we also ensure that the people we protect have access to education, healthcare, and livelihood opportunities, among others. In terms of presence, we are located in over 135 countries. Manpower-wise, we have over 17,000 staff worldwide. And 90% of these 17,000 people are actually on the ground working directly with the beneficiaries. So I am part of the 10% that is not on the ground, and my job is to mobilize resources and raise funds in support of all these programs that we have on the ground. In terms of funding, we are funded almost entirely by voluntary contributions, with 96% of our funding coming from governments, the European Union, the private sector, and individuals such as yourself. As you know, delivering aid programs and implementing all these long-term programs to help refugees rebuild their lives requires expertise, time, determination, a lot of heart, and plenty of support from many different actors, including the government, including NGOs like Relief Singapore, other UN agencies, the private sector, host communities, as well as the refugees themselves. And people like you are also important to the cause. You know, by attending this talk, you are showing that you care about these vulnerable communities. And if you are keen on helping, I strongly urge you to have conversations at home, in school, at work, about issues affecting refugees. Please do also volunteer with organizations that support refugees like Relief Singapore, like UNHCR. There's quite a number of these organizations like that in Singapore. Please do also, if you can, donate to organizations that work on refugee issues. You know, you can organize your own fundraising activities and raise funds for the cause. For corporates that are out there, you can think about launching employee giving programs. Every small contribution goes a long way. And so before I conclude my little speech and hand over the floor to John, I would like to thank Charles for sharing today. And I would like to thank John and the Relief Singapore team for organizing this event together with us. Relief Singapore is really one of our dearest partners here in Singapore. So thanks again, everyone, for attending. John, back to you.
Thanks, Anne. At this point, I just want to announce that RSG will be supporting UNHCR's Monsoon response in Cox's Bazar through a Give.Asia campaign. So we'll be launching it 5th July next week. And look for more details. We'll be sending out the campaign details to all attendees today. And you can help Rohingya by donating or spreading the word. Just spreading the word also you can contribute to the cause. And of course, check out our website, Relief SG. Okay, now a word of thanks to the RSG crew have been so hard at work this past weeks behind the scenes putting this event together. I couldn't have done it without you guys, and you know who you are, and I'm really glad for this collaboration with UNHCR. Charles, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Bangladesh through the internet, and of course, we hope that you bring back some meaningful takeaways from today's event. If you have any further questions or would like to stay updated on activities, here is the relevant information. That's right. Feel free to snap a photo of it. Okay, we have now reached the end of today's event. We would like to leave with you the music video which we played earlier on. And in case you're not aware, that song, Charles, you were quite touched by it, I could see just now. It's actually written by a friend, a personal friend, who wrote that song back in 2014 in response to the Gaza crisis. The crisis was getting worse back then, and we had a music event, and he actually wrote the song for that. So this is a song that is in this preview of the photography exhibition, Are You Home Yet? And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very
Ciao.
much.
Thank you.
Always
Thanks
welcome.
everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Video, please.
Look around at all this mess. My heart is sinking, I must confess. But the sun will rise again. I know it's not the end. Look around at all this mess. Something in me tells me that the sun will rise again, brighten up this place again. You'll be free from this nightmare you see. Oh, it's not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Oh, it's not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Just believe. Oh, look around at all this mess. Something in me tells me that the sun will rise again, brighten up this place again. You'll be free from this nightmare you see. Oh, it's not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Yeah, oh, it's not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Whoa, you'll go against the odds to rise from the ashes. Rise from the ashes. Whoa, go against the odds to find your rest in peace. Find your rest in peace. 'Cause all is not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Yeah, yeah, oh, it's not lost. There's a reason to live. I know it's tough, but you've got to believe. Just believe. Just believe. Oh, just believe. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, and bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.